Like, look at all of us here. Like, we're all, different shades. And if you look at our family photos, it's even more
I'm
of a
sorry,
diverse
guys.
range of
I'm
shades.
thinking of melatonin. I'm like, why did I say melatonin?
I was
Melanin.
there with
No,
you. I
I
was
knew
just
Melanin.
what you
putting that
meant.
out
Lord,
for you. I was
Lord
just
have
putting that
mercy.
out for you.
I was like,
I
damn,
was
Christina
like,
trying to take a nap on
I'm
us.
trying to
You
go to
trying to take a
sleep.
nap?
Guys, welcome to Track in Progress. That is me and my brother, Edwin
Eddie.
Shiz. Me and my brother have a Track in Progress podcast. Here we talk about culture, we talk about family, we talk about current events, we talk about our mutual interests, music and
Word.
psychology. And today we have an awesome, wonderful guest. It is our cousin Christina, Dr. Christina Sanchez in the house.
Woohoo! I am very excited to be here.
Word.
Excited for what you guys are doing, and very hyped to just, kick it off with y'all.
Word. And if I may say, like, I can't think of a better guest to have for this episode. Because not only are you obviously you're our cousin, we all Boricua, but you're not only passionate about this subject, but you're also well informed.
Coming in the generation that we came in with our family, with our background, it's not just something that we are learning about as far as education and academia, but it's something that we living in New York City, the melting pot. It's something that we've experienced of traditions, family values, etc. And so being able to be a Latina in New York City, coming up at the time that we did when things were just very different than what they look today, and I think that's things that we will touch up on. But I'm born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and a CUNY two-time graduate, master's degree in healthcare delivery leadership from the Icon School of Medicine over at Mount Sinai. And most recently, I joined the 1% of Latinas who have obtained their doctoral degree. And it's, business administration. So I have a doctorate in business administration with a focus of organizational leadership. And I think what's really important is that we get to continue to break barriers and many different fields that we have worked in. And I think that a little of what we'll get to speak about it is truly all of that today.
Qué rico es el latino. ¡Hoy se
Oh, he's got a picture.
ve!
He's got a picture on the guitar. I didn't even catch that last one.
Yeah.
Hey, Titi me preguntó si tengo mucha novia. Hey, mucha
Like right
novia.
away, the
Tengo a una,
significance and the
mañana
symbolism, man.
otra. Hey, me la voy a llevar a todas pa' un VIP, un VIP.
Hey,
Domino's table,
Domino's.
epic.
Yeah.
let me tell you.
I mean, they're working through sugar canes right now.
Actually, was so
And
cute.
they're really a couple.
Hey, yo,
I mean, I love that he brought the house, he brought the residency house to the
Casita.
fields.
África, que pagas a la tráfica.
I love every representation of hair color, hair texture, skin color.
Everything.
Gosh,
They have a chinero, the Saint Mary back there.
it's right here.
Gasolina, the Daddy Yankee.
Escuchando música de Puerto Rico.
And they showing all shades.
Barrios y los
You know
caseríos.
what I mean?
All shades.
We got LGBT right there. What's more accurate than this? It feels like everybody outside, standing by the truck, standing by the cars, literally dancing.
And this is his version of Kendrick with the Grand National.
I just love this.
Mi nombre es Benito Antonio Martínez Ocasio. Y si hoy
Full
estoy
name.
aquí en el Super
Yep.
Bowl 60,
Full name, full identity.
es porque
His
nunca.
mom's maiden name, all that.
Tú también deberías de creer en ti.
Epic, a real marriage happening right there. This right here took me out.
That was
The
so
most amazing salsa.
You know what this reminds me of? When Tito Nieves covered Taylor Dane's "I'll Always Love You" and did the salsa version.
I just love everything about this scene right here. They have the whole Valencia cake in the corner, so the groom and the bride, it's like this is their wedding party.
And yo, Lady Gaga's an honorary Puerto Rican until the end of the year, at least.
100%.
I'm gonna talk about it later, but like
One of my
that
favorites.
much bringing me salsa into the modern age because everything's
What really stands to me here is the different age generations that are present. They're from all ages, from the typical sleeping at a party kid, right? Like,
That was us.
but look at, you got grandpa dancing with the little granddaughter, great granddaughter. I love that. Ama sin miedo, love without fear.
La Maqueta.
Now we're transitioning into the New Yorican aspects of things. The barbershop, sitting in the barber seat. The bodega.
The bodega, yo.
just a boom, like the style.
West Side Story vibes, right?
Sure.
Think about West Side Story.
First of all, I just want to say I'm so stuck on the fact that these freaking sugar bushes are people.
Yes.
Right.
That part.
I
I'm
wish I
Sugar Cane number 7.
had
So she
that.
actually still owns the only Puerto Rican social club in Bushwick still. That woman, Donita.
Dope.
Mini Benito, come with that.
Bushwick, which you know what I'm saying, like that's our family there, man.
100%. In Puerto Rico, the musicians play the cuatro. It's not an easy instrument to play.
Or
No, that's our cousin. Let's go.
and the significance of Ricky Martin, because you think about the way he started off with Menudo when we were
Yeah.
kids, and the significant, like they were groundbreaking.
How phenomenal he sounds, though. Like, Jesus.
Sing that
Absolutely.
with his whole soul. That shit.
Power grid issues.
Your face.
Very big, very, very big. And he's just coming out of all of that with the light blue Puerto Rican
The
flag,
light
the
blue,
one that
yep.
was illegal to fly.
Azul
Before
Claro.
We talk about the drums was a form of communication for African slaves, which was about resistance and revolting. This is what you hear here, like very, very Afrocentric. Sí, se falta el sazón.
Yeah.
Such a big issue to this day with the power outages that happen.
This is my jam right here.
No, I love it.
I just want to know how many sugarcane people were on the fields.
Right.
I need to know this.
And
It's
all the
right here,
flags.
This celebratory vibe, like this energy.
This right here, this right here, the shout outs, all the Latin American countries.
The instruments in the background.
Puerto Rico. Seguimos aquí.
And this as a closer is perfect.
All right, guys. So that was too fun. I think I might have just been a little gratuitous, and I just wanted to watch it again, to be honest. All right, so we're gonna go through a few things. We're gonna go through the historical symbolism that we saw. We're gonna go through some of the cultural shout outs that he gave in that performance. And we're definitely going to talk about the emotional impact because there was a lot of it. And then we're going to close out with basically how you as a viewer can keep the momentum going from all of this. So let's just kick off this discussion with historical symbolism. So let's talk about a few of them, right? The sugar canes and the rural origins, the power grid, Ricky Martin singing his line. So talk about it. What was most impactful for you?
Yeah, I think that I feel like this is something you have to watch over and over again because there's so much happening that you can miss it, at the very beginning. And then you kind of go back and like, oh, I didn't see that, or I didn't see that, or I saw this and I didn't see that. But I think that there's just this overpowering feeling of emotions that just truly take over, like of being proudful, wanting to just dance and cry all at the same time. Because I think that when we talk about the history of Puerto Rico, when we date back into the Spanish American War, when we think back to when they made Puerto Rican citizens of the United States, this is something that to this day that we're still fighting for, something that our ancestors fought for. When they made us citizens, it was for our men to fight the war, right? And we look back and we talk about these things, and yeah, we're still not American enough to be American. And yet, we have to fight for this particular stage with people saying that he don't belong on the stage. It's the stage of America, And so the fact that he pulls out like this diversity, because as you mentioned earlier, there's so much that as a Latino, as Puerto Ricans, African, Indigenous, Spaniard, of who we're made of, the different colors that we put out there, right? And I feel like he represented that. He is a representation of our ancestors that got here, our grandmother. I know she's smiling from heaven above right now, because when they got here, I would have never imagined they thought that it would look like this. And the way he just continues to do this is just monumental.
I think beautifully said. I think going back to like the symbolism too, like starting with the sugar canes, that was the first one Lillian mentioned. Like when when our grandmother passed, and that was in New York, staying in Williamsburg. Williamsburg has that big domino. It's like they have the domino square.
Sugar factory.
They have that big, and so me and Lillian did another episode of our podcast where we were talking about Puerto Rico and how it's dying and all the things that led to it with the colonialism, and one of the things with sugar used to be such a big export for Puerto Rico, a source of income for the people. And after that colonialism happened, it's like they still had it, but it wound up being more profitable for United States and not Puerto Ricans, right? Because of all the tariffs and the Jones Act and this and that. But it's still a symbol of the history, that the coffee, obviously, yeah.
No, yeah. So when I saw the sugar canes and especially like the people working the fields, like it opens that way, right? Like it opens with them in the fields. They're cutting down those sugar canes. Like this is like the essential economy of this place. And then you wonder why this place is poor, right? Let's really consider that. This is their like main export, right? This is like the way that they have their economy. And so it's just an exploitation, like starting off with that as just a pure political statement. It's a steep visual, right? First of all, like we're looking at a Super Bowl, we're in a stadium, and now suddenly we're in the fields. So that visual is unavoidable. And then to see the workers doing the work, right? It's
with the machetes, right? Like, and back in the day, they imported the African slaves to do this work, and so you start thinking about that cultural mix that happened from the very beginning. And we're in 2026, we became citizens 1917. When you look at the timing, that's not that many generations behind us, and so when you see that significance, you can see the array of the colors that were on the screen. Everyone was represented there, from light to melatonin, like all of these different kind of shades that represent the diversity of being what a Latino is.
Mm-hmm.
No, for sure. And like, look at all of us here, like we're all, different shades. And if you look at our family photos, it's even more of a diverse range of
I'm
shades.
thinking of melatonin. I'm like, why did I say melatonin?
I was
Melanin. No, I was like, damn, Christina's trying to take a nap on us.
I'm trying to go to sleep.
I would say, I think the most impactful like imagery for me, like that stood out, that like I couldn't stop thinking about, was the power grid. First of all, it opened up with a stunt. And this is going to be like a central theme that I feel like I saw from this Super Bowl. Is that every political statement started with a very like poignant visual cue. And so
Yes.
for this, it was not just visual, it was audible, right? Like this is like the explosion of the Transformers, the people falling from the top of these you know, lines,
Light poles. Yeah.
and
Yep.
and then just like continuously working on it and working on it. Like, and then it
Yeah.
explodes again. And it's just like very it's it's very indicative of the neglect that has been
Yep.
happening. This is an ongoing crisis. After Maria, it's been completely neglected. The
Yep.
tax situation over there is means that there's no investment in the infrastructure, and yet people are still just resilient.
Yeah, and the local government has their hands tied, right? Um, the people, not only the people can't really vote, but they can't pass laws or none of that, right? They have their hands tied as far as like making any real changes, you know. So like with the power grid, like if the US doesn't invest in that, then what are they able to do? And on top of that, they have some of the worst power, you know, in the Americas, right? And they're paying some of the highest electricity prices on top of that. They paying like at least double what we pay in the States for what? For the poorest power grid.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And I also want to shed light on when we think back of when, let's say, when our grandmother or great grandmother got here, right?
Sure.
Spanish was not spoken as it is today, and I don't think that people would have thought, back in, let's say, 1930s, 1940s, when they were coming to the US, to the mainland here, that Spanish would be probably one of the most spoken languages in the United States. You go to certain places, and if you don't speak Spanish, they look at you like you have three heads, because they're like, we speak Spanish here. But when I think back about when our grandmother, Aida Bonilla, when she got here, she wasn't respected because she didn't speak English. She was ignored a lot of the times, had to work in factories just to try to make a living for her family. And then to see how fast forward we've come, with it being on one of the biggest stages of the United States, of America, to say we are here, we are resilient, we're not backing down, and we're going to continue to push forward so that we can be seen and represented.
Yeah, I think that this is going to be like I swear, when we celebrated it in my house, we treated it like it was a holiday. We were like, Benito Bowl, let's go. Like it was a whole, it's a Puerto Rican holiday now. There's nothing you can tell me that it's not. Like it is.
100%.
Because of what you said, Christina, right? The fact that this is a representation that is long overdue. The fact that it's representation that is not that it had to be, but very well earned by Bad Bunny, right? Like he worked so hard to get this. And then on the heels of a Grammy win, like talk about like main stage representation that hasn't happened. And it's even more insulting made by the fact that we're supposed to be American. So where is that representation happening?
And to your point about like him getting that spot, right? In order to get the Super Bowl, you have to have a proof. Like they're not just giving some artists like, oh, we like this artist, let's give them the Super Bowl spot. You have to prove that you can have that scale of a show. So how did Bad Bunny do that? He did that through the residency in Puerto Rico, which in itself, right? That album was an album that was made essentially a love letter to Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans, right? Speaking about everything that was going on, speaking about the culture, the issues, the colonialism, the everything that's happened currently. And then the residency, the level of performance that he gave, right? That like this didn't happen in a vacuum, right? He didn't create this show from scratch for the Super Bowl. This was part of what he was doing anyway, right? Obviously modified, but he already had that going. So when people want to say, well, he didn't deserve it, whatever. Yeah, absolutely, he did, and he's one of the biggest global artists, period.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one thing that I love about him is his courage. I love how courageous he is to continue to do things, with not trying to please mainstream, right? Where when he was up and coming, they said, well, you have to do a crossover so that, you can be played on the radio. And he's one of the very few that
Right.
refuse to do that, and he continues to break these boundaries and these barriers. Like, I mean, even before the Grammy, let's talk about Amazon Prime when he did his last concert and it streams, and again, many people could get caught up in the propaganda in the industry, right? Music industry, etc. But what I feel from this is like, I can't just even imagine being with an elder looking at their culture on TV. Everything about his vibes is home for us, right? And it's just truly
Yeah.
giving the world a sense of what we've always lived with. We've always lived with these kind of, vibes, environment, parties, the community that's behind our families that continue to break these boundaries that try to keep us, but together we are able to accomplish so much more. And I think he just continues to throw that out there, and now even more because of where the crisis that we're living with, immigration crisis that's happening with ICE and everything like that, I feel like it's even more that it has to be said, because we were once the Mexicans that were not allowed here. We were once the Ecuadorians that weren't allowed, and we continue to see this history repeat itself. But and today, now we have Latinos who do belong here, and yet we're still not wanted.
No, for sure, for sure. And then on top of that, right? And I don't want to get too deep into the political, right? But what happened with Venezuela, and I know their situation wasn't the best going into it, but just a warning, just like Bad Bunny has a song, about remembering what happened to Hawaii, right? It's a reflection of what's happening with Puerto Rico. Is the Venezuelans, like, if you want to see what happened to Hawaii, what happened to Puerto Rico and some of these other colonies, let's call it what it is, and it's not a positive outlook, especially with the current administration, you know. So
Yeah. Yeah, just very powerful. I think he continues to shout out various different cultural aspects, right? We talk about Nueva York, right? Nueva York being, because again, when we think about the history of Puerto Rico, when we became citizens, we were able to go back and forth from Puerto Rico to the US, from Puerto Rico to the US, and we think about where the majority of Puerto Ricans may have migrated, New York being one of the epicenters of Boricuas, right? We
Yep.
look about the twist and the different salsa flavors that we've created, and you look at the barbershop, you look at the bodega, right? Like everybody in the community was a family. I remember growing up back in the day when my family could not afford groceries. The bodega gave us credit and we were able to eat,
Yep.
and still be able to live our everyday life when we were struggling back in the day.
Yeah, my
No, for
mom,
sure.
I was just talking to my mom recently, and she was talking about her grandmother. So Ida's mom, our great grandmother, and she was talking about how when she came here, she was a seamstress, and that she was working for the people in the community. She had to learn like Italian just to get work within that community, but she was making clothes for her children. She was making clothes for people in the neighborhood because like that was how the community worked. Like you didn't have this like reliability of work, and
Mhm.
so she created these systems of revenue, and just I think it speaks widely to how they were able to build a community that was in its own way self-sustaining, because they were willing to take influence and then also offer their services with each other. And on that note about New York, I think it's very important that we bring up New York as the epicenter, like you said, because that is where a lot of cultures really did take influence from each other, which I think is like very serendipitous. It's very like it kind of represents what Puerto Rico is, right? Because when you think about the history of the island and the culture of the island is a melting pot, right? This was so many different influences creating this brand new culture, and that's what makes it so rich, and that's what also makes it so pillaged. But then coming into New York and then kind of recreating that whole scenario, right? Where now we're taking in more influence and we're providing more culture for New York. And just like, and then also like the activism that should be mentioned, right? Like the young lords doing their thing when
Yep.
the entire city was just filled with garbage because nobody was doing anything about it, right?
Pedro Abisu Campos, right? We talk about legendary revolutionists that were staples in, our freedom. There was a Puerto Rican activist that was the reason that we have 8-hour work schedules, and why we're saying that we have a 9 to 5 per se, and we weren't working 24-hour shifts or, ridiculous, times that was expected because we didn't have any rights at the time.
Oh, I totally never heard of
Sure.
that.
Or and if you want to look at, on the music side, like salsa as we know and love it now, that really kicked off in New York. Fania Records was founded in New York. So all these legendary salsa artists that we grew up with, like, that doesn't get created how it is without being in the influence of New York and the barrios, in those communities. That definitely needs to be shouted out, right? Because it started off as Latin jazz, and then it evolved. It evolved to what salsa became.
Yeah. I mean, he even had the jewelry station there,
Yeah.
right? And, if we think about the Tainos, who were the natives of the lands, they were called rich port. That's why it's called Puerto Rico, because
Yep.
they were considered a rich port. When they got there were a lot of gold that they found, and they thought that this gold was from the island that they would find it. But these were golds that was passed down from, their ancestors to ancestors and whatnot. And again, thinking back of the symbolism, right? Like if you look at Tonita is always with like all of this jewelry. She's the lady that was inside the bodega who served him a shot, and she, again, another like cultural living legend for the epicenter of New York City, that she still owns one of the only Puerto Rican community social clubs in Bushwick, where gentrification has hit that area like crazy.
Sure.
And she's holding on, right? Because what is it that she's holding on to? Holding on to the culture, holding on to a piece of our identity. And when we talk about identity, we talk about the fact that when they finally allowed us to fly our flag, we could only fly it with the American flag next to it. And they adopted the darker blue, right? And so that darker blue makes it almost seem like it was taken from the American flag as a star, right? It has one star, where the American flag has all the stars for the states, etc. But the truth of the matter is that during the time of Grito de Lares and Grito de Yagdes with Cuba and Puerto Rico,
Yep.
to show the unity amongst the both countries,
Solidarity. Yep.
the solidarity of both of them, they both had the flags in reverse colors, right? Because we wanted to have resistance. We wanted to be independent. We wanted to be our own. And, when we look at all of this, we lose this. This is not stuff they teach you in school. This is not in our history books, And so when we talk about our identity, we talk about our cultura, we talk about our culture. Oftentimes you will speak to other Latin American countries that live in the US or live in New York City. They still speak their Spanish. They still have a very high tradition of, oftentimes you cannot speak nothing but Spanish at home. We didn't get that same thing. And I could understand it, because when our ancestors came here, it was, if you didn't speak English, you weren't respected. If you didn't do this, you couldn't get to the next level of life. You were going to struggle. You were going to do A, B, and C. So, we have our own history and our own story to talk about, which is big because we lived it.
And I think people fully understand like that whole language thing. And we touched on it in our last episode, where that idea of like us not speaking English as Puerto Ricans in New York, right? Like I'm definitely one of them. But where does that come from? Well, yeah, it does come from the migration over to the States, of course, because there was an understanding that if you didn't speak English, like you weren't going to get anywhere. But
Yep.
you also have to consider that when schools were actually being funded on the mainland, on the island, a lot of those schools were being funded and they were firing teachers that spoke Spanish. They were removing teachers that didn't speak English. On the land that you are living where you speak Spanish, they were forcing that Americanization. They were forcing that English.
We talk about language as form of identity, right?
But the other thing, right? In New York, right? Growing up, going to the New York City school system in the 80s, if you spoke Spanish, it didn't matter if you also spoke English. Like they would just say, "All right, you're going to be in ESL class," and ESL
100%.
class what was especially treated like special ed. Like
Yes.
that was like
Yes.
if you were smart and real educated, like being in ESL class, like you wind up being behind. And
Right.
I know our mom, I think that's why she didn't really speak it to us. Like they spoke Spanglish, right? Obviously,
Right.
but I believe that's why she didn't want us to speak Spanish like that, because she was afraid of that. And her being an educator herself, she taught in Head Start. Like
Yeah.
she was once gonna pursue that route of being a a public school teacher, but she understood what that meant, and she didn't want
Right.
that for us.
Yeah.
So I definitely respect it. It's a shame though.
Yeah. I think that it's something that if you don't know, if like I feel like if you're looking from the outside in and you don't understand the dynamics of that transformation that occurred from Puerto Rico, let's say from our great grandmother to our grandmother to our parents. Our parents are second generation, right? Like because mama came here, so your mom is like that first generation to say we're teaching our
Yep.
mom Spanish, English. You know, the kids went to school and they came home with English, and they taught the elder in the house the native language of the United States. You know, so it's not surprising that it kind of faded with us because they tried so hard to make it. This was a moment of survival. You know, it was. Now I feel like in the world that we live in today, it's called thriving. You know, if you speak the language, you're going to be that much more needed. You're going to be, that much more marketable in the space that you're in. So it's interesting to see how the times have changed,
Yeah.
and just to see how far we've come, but yet we're still not there.
And on that note of survival, I do want to mention, I think there's like a really large misunderstanding when it comes to seeing people who are so proud of where they come from. I remember being in Florida, and some lady came up to us and she was like, can you tell me why Puerto Ricans are always so proud and like yelling through the streets and like flying their flag and everything? Like, and at the time I wasn't even educated, so I couldn't educate her at that time. But I think back on that as a question. And I'm really reflecting, watching this Super Bowl, right? When we think about what it was that made people migrate, they're not migrating because they're so impressed with like American culture. They're not migrating because they want something here that they couldn't have possibly ever had there. They would prefer to stay where they were. But when you take from their land, when you make it impossible to not just thrive, right? Like that would be lovely, but even survive. We're not just talking about the economy dying on the island. We're talking about the people dying on the island. So when they're migrating, they're not migrating just for the opportunity and the excitement and the possibilities. They're migrating for survival. And so when they come over here and then you say, well, then why are you so proud of where you come from? You think I want to be here? Like, no, they have to be here. They had to move over. And so then you talk about not being able to fly your flag. We talk about the massacres that happen on the island when people just try to keep their own nation, right? Yeah, you're going to see a whole lot of pride. You're going to see a whole lot of flag flying. You're going to see a whole lot of people on the internet really, really excited about this Bad Bunny concert that just happened to have a game at the same time. I don't know. Like, I don't even
Yeah.
know what to
Exactly.
say.
Yeah, same.
And but also, right, like my feeling is, and listen, no, this is no disrespect or anything to the people on the island. I know they have, like, they speak about their own culture, but I would say, like, New Yorican culture is Puerto Rican culture, right?
Yeah.
We talk about the when that migration happened, and I'll be remiss if I don't mention Humboldt Park in Chicago, right, which has a huge
Mm,
Puerto Rican population, and some other places. There's some other places around the states that have huge
yeah.
Puerto Rican,
Very big
and Florida
population.
now too. But Humboldt Park is one of them, and obviously New York. But you know, bringing that culture and having so much of that culture develop in New York, but dealing with the racism, dealing with all that we dealt with, and it's no surprise that the pride, the pride that we've developed. Like, yes, we're gonna be loud, yes, we're gonna be boisterous, and um because we're facing the adversity, right? Like, you have that whitewashed movie, West Side Story, you know what I'm saying,
Hmm. Hmm.
with the Puerto Rican gangs, and what I'm saying, it's whitewashed, but
Hmm.
there's a version of that is true. The
Right.
racism, and having to fight for your place and all that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not being
Yeah.
accepted.
Yeah. And I think back on how far we've come when it comes to DEI, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion. And yet the numbers still don't change, right? And so part of my dissertation was doing research on the C-suite Latina leaders in hospitals across the United States, and we only make up 1.8% across the US. And yet we are the most growing, booming population in the US. But yet, the ones that are at the highest level that are making decisions for our community have no idea who we are as a person and what we are as a culture. And yet, those decisions on how our fundings are going to be allocated, to the programs and where the monies go and whatnot, like, comes from the highest level. When you look at academia, Latinos again are in the 1 percentile range or under 5 percentile. Like, you look at that and you're saying, well, it doesn't mean that we're not professionals. It doesn't mean that we're not getting the education, right? As I mentioned when I first joined, I am 1% who joined Latinas, and that's not even saying Puerto Ricans. That means that Puerto Ricans make up less than 1% of doctorate degree holders. And so as we continue to have these conversations, we get to change that narrative, right? And so that's what that looks like for me when I see him on that stage. For me, he's changing the narrative, giving the Grammy Award to the little boy as a representation of himself. I think in our own way, we do that for ourselves, because I get to say to the Christina that grew up in East New York, Brooklyn, that grew up, I remember being in a hospital panel and saying that it didn't matter if you were Black, white, Chinese, whatever. If you lived on my block, you were poor. That was our culture.
Yeah.
We were in the hood. And it didn't matter what we looked like and where we came from, ultimately, because we were all struggling with something at that moment. And so I think that he signifies representation. He signifies the resistance of saying that, what, despite everything that's happening right now, I'm going to still take the stage and I'm going to wave all of these flags, not just the Puerto
Yep.
Rican flag, right? He literally named Latin American countries, Jamaica, right? Like, because we're all being targeted within our own set way.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I want to say one thing, to kind of touch on something, like, with the representation of him on the big stage, right? The music, like, whether it's reggaeton, salsa, bomba, any of these genres, like, it was looked as ethnic music, Latin music. They had a separate Latin Grammy awards, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's always been separated. Like, this is not mainstream, this is for this group of people. Like, Bad Bunny winning the album of the year Grammy is not Spanish album of the year, it's not Latin album of the year,
Right,
it's not it's
right.
album of the year. performing
Big.
at the Super Bowl, which is the one of the biggest stages that you can have, you know, um, and that's huge. That shows like it's we are mainstream also. We are part of
Yes.
this culture, you know, and there's a group of people that don't like it, and I'm here to say I don't care. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna deal with it. You know,
That part.
um, go watch Wet Dog looking ass Kid Rock if you want to. I don't care.
Exactly.
I just saw a clip of him jumping up and down in his jorts. I'm not interested. So I think we're really kind of touched on some of the cultural shout outs that we saw in there. And now that we're talking about the emotional impact, I wanted to mention something that I think was really, really important to me. So when I grew up, I was the youngest out of the family. And I also just was so far removed that I didn't learn Spanish, that I didn't really get taught about the culture. If I would have been in the room when people were really sharing that culture, then I would have been the last one to know what anybody was talking about or that anybody was talking to. And the little bit of the culture that I did get when our grandmother would do Three Kings Day, or, she would do the rosary and she would celebrate a lot of these things. One, I was so young, so I didn't get as many years of that because at a certain point she has stopped, people have moved away, and these are the natural progressions of our families, right? But for me, the thing that I'm getting so much, not just out of this performance, but out of Bad Bunny's just rise to stardom, is that in my own personal interest and hope to reconnect with my Puerto Rican roots, he is setting the tone and setting the platform for people to actually get recognized, for people to get pushed on these algorithms. I've seen more Puerto Rican content in
Yep.
this few weeks leading up to Bad Bunny's concert. I swear, that's what I'm calling the Super Bowl. I just want y'all to know it was Bad Bunny's concert.
Period.
Period. It was Benito Bowl. Okay.
Period.
I've seen more Puerto Rican content leading up to this event.
Yeah.
I've seen in my years on YouTube, and this is not out of a lack of looking. I'm saying even when I search these terms, 9 times out of 10, I would type in Puerto Rican culture or I would type in Latino culture, and I'm getting Mexican stuff. I'm getting Spaniard stuff. And that's no hate because that's also been very helpful to me. Even just the language itself being that identity is very helpful. But to see my culture represent my parents and my grandparents and my great grandparents and my ancestors, their culture being represented on the screen, for me, it's not about just the big screen because frankly, we deserve to be on that big screen this whole time. But it's the fact that I can learn about my culture from other Puerto Ricans. I'm seeing new recipes that I ain't seen, right? I'm seeing people just come across my timeline on Instagram. I was never seeing these people. So for me, I'm just so grateful that we're on the platform now, because now I'm just connecting with normal people who also identify as Puerto Ricans, New Yorkers, right?
Yeah.
I'm learning about these places in Chicago. I'm learning about some of the history that I had never heard before. And I'll end on this. When you think about my husband is African American, right? Some of the things that I've talked about with him is how a lot of the stuff that he's learned about African American history has been from African American teachers that he was just lucky enough to be in the classroom with, right? Because it wasn't in the curriculum. And I think that's reflected here. Just the identity of being Puerto Rican history was never in the curriculum. And if I also was disconnected from Puerto Rican people on top of that, how was I even supposed to know? So I'm out here with the other white people learning about Puerto Rico right now because it's actually come across my timeline. So I'm just super grateful for that. And that's what it means to me.
No, I was gonna say I think it's funny because me and Christina, we did get more of that with us being older, but even still there was a time when we didn't maybe appreciate it as much because you remember in the parties when they'd be playing Spanish music and salsa and we'd be like, no, play the English,
we wouldn't want to hear it,
right, play the English, but eventually, as we got older, and we got to, appreciate that, and but I think someone like Bad Bunny, him making the kind of music he does, like it drew in both the younger generation and the newer generation,
Yeah.
especially with this album. I feel like this album, is kind of a bridging of the generation, because you have his, reggaeton trap music, you have the salsa, you got the bomba, you got all the different
Yeah.
genres like meshed up, and then talking about the island. So it's a beautiful mesh of that, because some of his older music, it was, and he was younger when he was doing it, so it was for the younger generation. Now that he's getting older and more mature, it's reflecting that as well.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think you said it best earlier, a love letter to Puerto Rico, right? Like,
Or
it doesn't get any better than that, because again, when you think of it on that level, it's gonna embody everyone, everything, right? Like, you look at the coqui that was big in his
or
residency, and you just think of the significance of what that is. It's there you go. It's such a big deal, and he just continues to really do great things, and it's almost a re-sparking of these home, I keep saying home, or this feeling, this warm feeling of belonging, to see
yeah.
our culture like just being alive again.
And I love it for my son. My son just he's 11. We live in California. So he's not around other Puerto Ricans very often. When he's around the family, when we do come, he loves it. But for him to see that representation like that, to see all the
Yeah.
flags, the music, the culture, like, I'm sure he's beaming. And we've had some representation, like Miles Morales being half Puerto Rican.
What are the
That
odds I was wearing this shirt? You know what I'm
right.
saying?
There you go. There you go. And saying, so stuff like that. And my son is half black, half Puerto Rican. My wife is African American, right? So Miles Morales is him, right? It's like that, so he gets that, but to see the representation of that Puerto Rican side is good for him, because he's with my in-laws. He's around other folks,
Right.
but there's not a lot of Puerto Ricans out here in LA. I'll be honest. Although
Yeah.
they did open up a new Puerto Rican restaurant called Taino's LA, which I'm
That's dope.
I'm gonna check it out soon.
And I think that, like, let's talk about that for a second, right? Let's talk about how are the different levels that we connect, right? Food being one of them, food
Absolutely.
being a big way that we connect to our culture, the music, the communities, like those different things. And I think that's amazing that Gray gets to have representation, right? Like, he gets to see others that look like him, that are about something and doing something positive within the community, So I think that is just super cool that he gets a piece of that as well, right? So then we talk about how this is connecting the various years of generations, right? Like, it's just connecting all of that. We look at Tonita, who is probably like in her 70s or 80s, and
Yeah.
the way that, I mean, I was just on her IG, and people were more hype about seeing her than even Bad Bunny himself.
Yeah.
And I was just like, it just brought tears. Like, I just wanted to just bawl, right? Because it's just like this orgullo, like this pride, just to know, like, she's a staple in her community, and people respect her, and I feel like it brings us again, when we are younger and we're like around our elders, we always ask for bendición, right? We always ask for their blessings. It's this hierarchy of, respect your elders. And, I think that we've been taught that. We've been having, the structures of discipline from the beginning, like, we grew up with, don't get into adults conversations and adults business, etc., right? Mind your business, etc. But I think at the end, it's created this traditional way of being almost.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about something that you mentioned, right? Which is that people were excited to see Tonita almost as much, or if not more, than seeing Bad Bunny. And why, right? Because this is not just, oh, I know her. This is a staple of your community. This is a person who is keeping your culture alive. And I think that's what he represented in this so well. Is he didn't just highlight her, he highlighted the people who are singing the songs and carrying those songs down through generation and generation, and now younger people are singing these folk songs, right? What he's doing is really showing and shining a light on the people who are doing the slow, boring, unglamorous, but necessary, wildly necessary work of keeping that culture alive. Because if you leave it to situations like me, if I didn't have Bad Bunny, I'm gonna be honest, I would still know much less about Puerto Rico, simply because he actually made just finding out more about Puerto Rico popular enough that more people started talking about it. More Puerto Ricans started making content because they felt like maybe there was a market for it, right?
Right.
And Edwin, you talking about your son having that representation, especially when he's in an environment that's not giving that representation to him. Think about it now that Bad Bunny has done this show and he's been on this specific stage. Think about, because this is not going to be new, right? All of the artists, all of the writers, all of the people that are making art that are from Puerto Rican heritage, who are telling Puerto Rican stories, who are for the first time going to be seen and heard because people are interested now. Think about the superhero stories or the shows or just the main characters that are going to pop up of Puerto Rican identity that are now going to be a representation that your son can see, simply because Bad Bunny made it to this stage. So I think that's what it means to me. It's like, it's not even so much like I don't necessarily care that he was on the NFL stage. I care what it's going to do for our next generations that are going to be able to actually have more stories that are more popularized because people see there's a market for it. All right, guys. I do want to close it out, and we're going to talk about how we can keep the momentum. But before I do that, were there any last thoughts that you guys wanted to mention? Any visuals that really stuck out to you? Any message that you felt really spoke to you?
It's so hard to just pick one. Like every time I think I have a favorite, it's just a memory of something else. But I'm just very proud to be living through these moments, very proud to be a Latina who continues to attempt to break these barriers and just continue to speak our truth. I think that's important, that we continue to pass the reins on, just the way that you're doing it with Gray, right? I get to do it with my son Desmond, and let them also be proud, because we come from a bloodline of warriors that don't give up.
Yeah. On that note, not all adult business is only adult business, right? So when you are talking about these things, when you are having these conversations, like include them in it for sure.
Yep.
I just wanted to mention, because we did
absolutely.
I just wanted to mention the billboard, right? That message of love over hate.
Big.
And especially with everybody carrying those different flags, right? I saw a clip earlier today of just a family in their house watching the Super Bowl and watching that moment. And as he was saying the names of the different nations, when he said Ecuador, like they blew up, and like it kind of clicked in that moment where like everybody is feeling this, all these Latin American nations, and for him to really bring it home, like God bless America wasn't God bless the USA. God bless America was all of the Americas, and that includes the USA, but it's not limited to it. And he even said Canada in there. It wasn't even just about Latin America. So he really, I think he represented, of course, Puerto Ricans well, but he also represented the Americas very well. He included everybody in a way that people don't feel included. I know I always feel like Puerto Rico is never mentioned, so I can only imagine being one of these other Latino countries that feels like they're never mentioned. And so to have that opportunity on this stage, I can see just how much that must have meant to people.
Yeah, yeah. Puerto Rico has one athlete in this year's Winter Olympics. One athlete in Milan. I think it's Milan Cortana, right? It's two cities in Italy, and it's skeleton, which is a crazy sport, right? How do you get that from Puerto Rico? It's wild. That's neither here nor there, but I just wanted to say
I
that.
don't even know what that is. What
And
is
has
that?
I've never heard of
skeleton. It's kind of like luge. It's like sliding on the ice, like kind of a race, but you're on your belly and going head first.
Okay.
Oh wow.
It's wild. It's wild. It's given like Jamaican bobsled a little bit.
Cool runnings.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, a little bit, right? It's a single person doing it and they're head first, but it's kind of given parallels. But what I was gonna say when we talk about the next generation and educating them, right? Like everyone knows the celebrities, right? People gonna know Bad Bunny. People gonna know um, um, all the actors and stuff like that, right? But we need to keep some legends alive, right? Like I love how um, God, now my brain is failing me. But like someone like Roberto Clemente in
Yes.
baseball, like he's continuing to be a staple and a representation of Puerto Rican greatness, but not just athletes, not just celebrities, but like anyone who has made. There's lots of Puerto Ricans who have helped in different fields and making breakthroughs. One thing that we've done with Gray when we were doing homeschooling is we've researched people like Puerto Ricans or other Latinos that have made impacts in different fields. I learned recently. Everyone knows. Oh gosh, what's his name? The artist in New York, Keith Haring. I recently came across the video, and this is the algorithm changing right now that Bad Bunny. Keith Haring had a right hand man who helped him with his art, who helped him get into some of these places. Because a white guy in New York is kind of like doing the graffiti, right? You need someone on the inside. That was a Puerto Rican. And I'll link the name because the name is escaping me. I'll link it on this video. He was Keith Haring's right hand man, and that wind up getting excluded. I don't blame Keith Haring. I blame the people who have told the story. But now it's out there, right? People like that, people in the arts, people in education, all of that. We need to keep these names alive to know that we can do anything. We can truly do anything. And one of these days, Christina is going to be mentioned in that.
Amen.
Absolutely.
Very proud to have you as my cousin. Actually, on the note of just like talking about some of the other people, other Puerto Rican people that are out here just doing the thing, just living life and contributing, whether they get known or not, whether their stories get told or not, they've been contributing the whole time. I want to bring it to our Keeping the Momentum segment. So Bad Bunny did his part, right, as an artist, but what happens next is definitely on us, right? His job is not to be a politician, right? His job was to amplify the message, but now it's our job to take that and either continue to amplify it and make it something, right? Build systems, improve systems. So I'm just going to read off something that I wrote, and we're going to link a whole bunch of stuff actually in the description for this video, just so if you're thinking about, contributing to some of the movements. If you're thinking about learning more about Puerto Rico and its history, if you're thinking about supporting Puerto Rican artists or content creators, we're going to put that kind of stuff in the description. But when we talk about what it is that you can do, you can start with learning one more thing. Just learn one more thing. You can read, right? There's a book called Puerto Rico, A National History by Joel Melendez Badillo. It's a comprehensive modern history of the island. You can explore a site called Centro de Estudios Puertorriqueños. That's the history and diaspora context. So you can learn all about Puerto Rico through that. Watch videos. There's a particular person that I follow. Her name is Bianca Graulau. Yeah.
Graulau? No.
Bianca Graulau. I'm so sorry if I butchered it. And she details Puerto Rican history and politics. And that's a place that I think you should go to her channel if you really want to understand like what this fight between sovereignty and statehood really is. She does an excellent job of depicting what that battle is. Maybe you need to know, or you've already learned something for the day and you actually just want to move straight into action, and that's your next step. What you can do, support the work that's already working, right? There's already movements, there's already organizations that exist. Go support them, right? These are people already on the front line. Sometimes it can get very easy to feel paralyzed because like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to solve. I don't want to be a hero. There are already heroes in the world. Go support them, right? They need support. So we have a PR fund. That's a mutual aid and disaster response. There's also a Maria Fund, grassroots Puerto Rican-led organizations. We're also going to link as many as we can link in the description because there's tons of others. And if you're watching and you know of an organization that you think would be a really great organization for people to support, go ahead and put that in the comment section. And finally, what you can do is you can support other Puerto Rican artists. You can support content creators, support the academics, support businesses. Like, this is where like the inner workings of community actually do a huge portion of the work, right? Follow, share, support where possible, amplify the message, share it, right? Like, talk about what you've learned with people in your community. Share vetted information. This is important when we're talking about the history of Puerto Rico, when we're talking about the politics of Puerto Rico. Vet that information. That is actually something you can do. You can take the time to vet the information. Simple as that. And push back on the myths in real time. If somebody's saying something that you know not to be true, you've vetted the information yourself, push back on it. Don't let these myths persist. Right? Have those conversations, those difficult conversations. If you're thinking to yourself, wow, there's people really on the front lines doing hard work. You can do hard work too in having a conversation. Sometimes that's the hardest work to do, especially if it's family, especially if it's, people in your own community. So definitely push back on those myths. And on that note, I think we'll close it out. Any final thoughts?
Since you were talking about supporting an artist, I wanted to give a shout out to one of my favorite independent Puerto Rican artists. He goes by Bobito Ross, which is a play on Bob Ross. You know the joy of painting, happy trees and clouds and stuff. He goes by Bobito Ross. He's definitely as much of an artist. He's also an activist. His art reflects that. I've been following him for a while, so I just wanted to give him a shout out for keeping the culture alive as well.
Yes. Love that. Yeah. My last thing, que viva Puerto Rico, que viva todos los latinos. Estamos aquí unidos, and we just got to keep sticking together because the better that we are together, the harder they are to separate us.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Christina, Dr. Sanchez, thank you so much for coming on our podcast.
It was such a pleasure to be here with you guys. I think keep doing what you're doing. I love everything about this.
Thank you. And I hope to see you again on here. We're going to need your expertise from time to time.
I got you guys.
All right. Love you.
Love you.
Bye, fam.
Bye.